Slept on Cinema is sponsored by Training Ties, the ultimate shoe tying tool. If you know someone who's struggling with shoe tying for any reason, Training Ties is the perfect solution.
A tired procession of supernatural horror cliches.
The doll from The Conjuring is as wooden as the scares in James Wan's lackluster horror.
It's dull, predictable, and really dumb.
The best performance in the film comes from a 2-year-old baby.
Like the titular doll, this thing's off the shelf.
What is this, Charles Lee Ray? Voodoo was kitschy in the 80s. We're certainly not going to take it seriously now.
Welcome to this week's episode of Slept on Cinema. I'm your host, Stan Steamer.
And I'm Grove Street.
And this week we're getting into the 2014 horror classic Annabelle. I feel like we say this every week, but again, absolutely completely shocked that this movie qualifies. Cannot believe. I thought you were lying to me when you told me that the movie qualified.
Yeah, I was just going to say that, and then I was like, oh, wow, I say that every single podcast. But I couldn't believe something that is part of the Conjuring universe and has, there's 3 movies so far in this universe of Annabelle somehow makes the cut.
It's insane. As always, this movie is, just like all of our movies that we review, at or below 50 on Rotten Tomatoes for both critics and audiences. And we structure the podcast so that the first half is spoiler-free. We talk about some things to look for in the film. Take a break, go watch the film, come back and talk about what we just saw. You want to hit us with the rotten premise?
Rotten premise. John Form thinks he's found the perfect gift for his expectant wife, Mia, a vintage doll in a beautiful white dress. However, the couple's delight doesn't last long. One terrible night, devil worshippers invade their home and launch a violent attack against the couple. When the cultists try to summon a demon, they smear a bloody rune on the nursery wall and drip blood on Mia's doll, thereby turning the former object of beauty into a conduit for ultimate evil. Critic score, a lowly 28, and audience, 35%. Really, really low scores for this movie.
Critics, sure, whatever. But the audience, I don't get it. Like, this is a great movie.
I don't get it either. And I'm sure you're going to go over this in your information about the movie, but it does pretty well and people seem to enjoy it. So I really don't understand. Like we said, there's 2 sequels and it's part of this huge universe. And I think there's more coming. So I really don't understand the reviews. It goes back to horror movies not getting, like you've said before multiple times on this podcast, like everyone's looking for something different in horror.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe this is some weird sweet spot where people just don't feel like they like it, but end up watching it anyway.
That's true. I feel like maybe people have a very specific thing they want with doll horror. Maybe it's like such a narrow subgenre of horror that people have a very particular thing in mind when it comes to doll horror. I know I take all types of doll horror, really.
I'm an open book when it comes to doll horror. Any kind you want to throw at me, go for it.
So this movie came out October 3rd, 2014 on only a $6.5 million budget, which is mind-blowing. I mean, it costs more, I don't know, to like make a home movie these days.
That's a quarter of Sean Connery's paycheck for League of Extraordinary Gentlemen.
Yeah, it's wild. $6.5 million budget. It opened number 2 behind opening weekend of Gone Girl, which is also a classic. It took in $37.1 million its opening weekend, and it was also only $400,000 behind Gone Girl, so I feel like that's basically a tie. You know, put in some, I don't know, inflation or FX rates. Who knows? It could have come in first after, depending on the math. And it knocked off The Equalizer, which is an amazing Denzel film.
Yep.
Overall, took in $257 million on a $6.5 million budget. So you mentioned this before. This movie was one of the most successful movies of all time. If you're looking at just, butts in seats off of cost to make a movie, it's bonkers.
It's so funny looking at the Rotten Tomatoes reviews and then being like, how do they make 3 of these? And then you look at the money that's made and it's insane. Only $6.5 million, and they made $257 million off of this.
It's crazy.
More coming.
As people probably know, This is the second film in the Conjuring universe, the Conjuring franchise. Conjuring came out the year before and did really well, so they greenlit this right off the bat, from sort of a minor sort of character, I guess you'd say, in the first film. And it was a brilliant move to sort of tap into that same world that existed in The Conjuring, but really go off in a totally different space. Like, yeah, there's some overlap, obviously, but there's not a lot of the characters are, the people in this are entirely different. It's an entirely different movie, but it just happens to exist in that same world. And you get to pull in all those people from that had interest in the original Conjuring without having to recreate that sort of groundswell of support, but still being able to do your own thing, which is really, really brilliant. At this point, there are 8 films in the Conjuring universe, 3 of the original sort of Conjuring sequels and whatnot, 3 tied to Annabelle, and then 2 others, one of which we're going to do next week. This is sort of a little Conjuring back-to-back double feature, Conjuring universe. So all 8 films have made a combined $2.1 billion with a B, $2.1 billion on a total aggregate budget of $178 million. I mean, that is you don't come across investments that are that good in any situation.
Wow.
So I mean, it's a great film. It was a great business move, which, not that we really care about all that much here, but I think it's just indicative of how great the film is, that it was that many people went to go see it over and over again.
And I think the Conjuring universe does this really well with Annabelle and some of the other movies, where they don't rely on I forget the main characters' names from The Conjuring, but they don't rely on the characters from The Conjuring to boost up the other like side movies like this and some of the other ones. They allow the movie to sort of stand on its own, kind of like Too Fast, Too Furious, where we got a movie about Brian and we didn't need the rest of the familia.
Totally. It makes total sense because it allows you to sort of tap into that world, but also explore all these different areas. And they also do an interesting thing here that I guess Fast and the Furious hasn't really done yet, where they span decades of time. This film takes place in 1967. It's the third chronologically of the 8 films that are out so far. But they jump all over different time frames, which also gives them a really interesting way to just explore the franchise.
Yeah, really, really well done. I really can't believe those numbers.
It's insane.
All right, I want to jump into Bolo.
Let's do it.
Bolo opening text, always fun.
Yeah, I feel like this we have a bit of a disagreement on this one. I'm not a huge opening text guy. I know you are. I'm sort of like, I'm here to watch a movie, not read a book. But
I like it because it takes away from unnecessary scenes that they could show. And so it just jumps you right in. It sort of just fast forwards you to a place instead of having to watch an additional 15 minutes of scenes that could have been summed up in a text. So I like that it's like saving me time and I already get to the place I need to be at.
That's true. I guess maybe I'd like it if it was perhaps narrated.
Well, I already have subtitles on, so I'm already reading during the movies.
All right. I will take Bolo sewing. It's quite a bit of sewing, but interestingly enough, very little of the actual end result. So lots of the act of sewing and not a whole lot of the outcome.
She's in love with the process.
I get it.
Bolo, a thumb war.
That's a great scene. That it's also a scene that is sort of like Bolo movie stars. Like you can tell in that scene who's the movie stars and who are the extras very clearly. Like they're just these 2 beautiful people in a room full of very normal looking people.
Yeah. You don't always see those beautiful people on the pews.
Yeah. I will go with Bolo relevant news footage. One of my favorites.
Oh, that is one of your favorites. That's great. Maybe not on point with the timeline, but who cares?
Right.
Bolo, 2 Annabelles.
Yes. Yeah, that's kind of a inside the movie, outside the movie situation.
Exactly.
I'm just going to say Bolo dolls. Maybe it's obvious, but just keep your eye out for dolls.
That was my next one. I put that in right before we signed on here. It's like, why did you mention the dolls? Bolo happens a lot in horror movies. Not listening to your wife.
Yep. It's a dangerous game. I'm going to say Bolo, an homage to the movie Speed.
Very good. Bolo, an IKEA sewing machine, which may or not have existed at that time frame.
A little time travel element, perhaps. I will say, and this is one of my favorite things about watching older movies, Bolo, vintage food.
I'll piggyback on that. Bolo, taco-flavored Doritos.
Ooh, delicious. I will say Bolo, and this is our second round of this, Bolo creepy kids drawings.
Bolo TV antennas or bunny ears.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, those are sign of the times, really.
Used to be a skill. It's lost now.
I'm going to say Bolo lamps. There's just a huge number of lamps and some really great lamps, too. So if you're a fan of lamps, this is the movie for you.
Bolo, this gets a bad rap for being only for pregnant women, but it's one of my favorite combinations. Bolo, mustard, and pickles.
Interesting. I had no idea you were a mustard pickles guy.
Oh, I'm here in Paris, and I've had quite a few of those mustard and pickle sandwiches.
Yeah, they know what they're doing there in terms of their mustard. They make a mean mustard in France. I'm going to say Bolo, one really nice elevator. Maybe is haunted.
Bolo hitting the 6th floor button 3 times on an elevator. Might mean something more.
Yeah, it might. I'll go Bolo Jiffy Pop. Stick there on the food thing. Love the Jiffy Pop.
Bolo currently illegal cribs.
Nice. This is my last Bolo. Bolo, just peep the painted walls. They got some really interesting choices on the walls, and I dig it.
I've got 2 more. Bolo, a Conjure reference, and Bolo, blood in the eye.
Yes, definitely Bolo, blood in the eye. It's sort of hard to miss, but also crucial.
Very crucial. Let's get to our what drink to pair with the movie.
Yeah, let's do it.
I went on the nose a bit here, so I went with the Annabelle Special libation that calls for 2 ounces of Benedictine, a quarter ounce of dry vermouth, and a quarter ounce of lime juice. It's sort of like a martini, and it's served with a little bit of cracked ice and strained into a martini glass.
Interesting. It's like you got a little bit of, I feel like the Benedictine makes me think a little like monks, like you got some sort of the devil Christian stuff going on. Then you got a little bit tartness, maybe the horror there. I don't know, but that sounds delicious.
And martinis are flowing in the 60s as well.
Mm-hmm. Yep. On that same line, I'm just going an old fashioned. I feel like an old fashioned, like in this 1967, I'm sure every single person on screen has had an old fashioned. It's obviously an older drink, but I feel like it's a drink that's just been with us throughout all of modern history, I imagine. And I think pouring yourself an old fashioned would just go really well with this film.
Yeah, a couple of little old timey drinks, and there's not much better than a great old fashioned, but you have to be careful where you order those because a lot of times it's just syrupy and gross.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just not worth it.
Yeah, it's that, and it's one of those drinks that you can really make well yourself at home.
Yes.
Like a lot of cocktails, for whatever reason, when I make it home, they're just not that good. But an old fashioned, you can just make your own at home, and for whatever reason, that one comes out better. I don't know what it is.
And you can be simple with it, or you can go nuts and start muddling and have a great time. There's so many, you can have all different types of great old fashioned. So yeah, make your old fashioned at home. So either a Annabelle Special or an old fashioned would go great with this movie.
Yeah, love it.
All right, I'm excited. Let's take a break and watch the movie.
Yeah, enjoy.
I like your dolls.
You survived. You don't come out the other side of something like this weaker. What is there left to be scared of?
I don't think what you're experiencing is a ghost.
Sometimes demons can attach themselves to objects.
What do I do? Protect your family.
Slept on Cinema is brought to you by Training Ties, the ultimate shoe tying tool. If you know anyone who's struggling with shoe tying, Training Ties is the perfect solution. Or if you know anyone who just doesn't like tying their shoes, Training Ties keep shoes tied all day long. Say no to Velcro and yes to independence with Training Ties.
Welcome back.
Welcome back. Creepy movie.
That was so creepy. I feel like I read one of the reviews that was like, this movie's not even that scary. It's not that creepy. Did someone fall asleep when they were watching this? Because this is one of the creepier movies that I've seen recently.
Does no one else have like a fear of these type of dolls? Of course, this is creepy. Yeah, this is what we think is going to happen every time we see one of these dolls. Or you'd have go visit someone's house and they have these dolls, and you're like, why would you do this to yourself?
Yeah, it's creepy. The doll's creepy. The situations are creepy. Everything about it is just eerie.
The neighbor's kids are creepy.
Yeah. Do you think I couldn't tell this? Do they exist? Are they real?
The kids?
Yeah. Like, do we ever know if they're real or?
Yeah, they're real. I mean, I'm pretty sure they're real. That was the daughter of the neighbors, and I believe she comes up in the sequel, which is a prequel.
Okay. All right. He says I was watching it, and at first I was like, oh, they're definitely real, and then you get those drawings later, and I'm like, well, those were probably just like done by the demon. But then I was like, well, maybe the demon sort of made those kids, like he sort of shows up as the priest later. Maybe he was sort of inhabiting them. I couldn't tell. It like scrambled my brain a little bit once I started thinking about that.
It is a fun game to play when you watch a movie and just play, sort of just go with, is that person real? And see if you give yourself a little Sixth Sense moment.
Mm-hmm.
All right, you got the first pick.
All right. This one, I have a lot of things to choose from. I feel like I have a lot of places to go, but this movie, there's a clear one of one. This is like everyone else is this fifth round or later. I'm going with Annabelle the doll. I mean, we just got into a little bit. It's the creepiest thing I've ever seen, maybe in my entire life. You said it yourself. Of course, this thing is going to get possessed. Even before it got possessed, it was probably already possessed by like a not as strong demon, and this one just like pushed it out. And there's just zero chance to think this is like the first possession of that doll. Zero chance.
This is just the biggest possession, or the most current one that year of the possessions that take place with this doll.
Yeah, I mean, first of all, like what percentage of dolls do you think just are possessed? Like, I feel like probably 10%.
I was thinking 90 to 95% of dolls.
So most dolls are, and I also feel like maybe there's like the larger the doll, the more likely it is to be possessed. And this thing's huge.
And the more porcelain it is, for sure.
Yes. So, I mean, I couldn't believe when this guy brought this thing home. It was the most creepy looking doll I've ever seen in my entire life.
I couldn't believe she was looking for it for so long.
Yes. Yeah, it's crazy. Do they all look like this? It's bonkers. Whoever was in the prop department, or I don't know who found this doll, or if they made it for this movie, or how they made it, but it's perfect. I can't imagine a better doll for this movie.
Yeah, and based off of a Raggedy Ann doll, right? In the original, but they couldn't use the Raggedy Ann doll for obvious reasons. But this is even better.
So much better. This is the creepiest thing. Its face, its eyes, the porcelain, everything about it is unbelievably scary. Yeah,
great first pick. That was definitely the first pick. I was going to choose that. My first pick is going to be this maybe is resonates more now for me and maybe you, but baby horror in movies now where like there's something going on with the baby or around the baby, and there's noises with the baby might be possessed or something's gonna get your baby. It just now, I mean, I have a 1.5-year-old, and you have, what is she now, 2?
She's almost 3.
Good Lord. Yeah, so this stuff just hits a little harder now, and the baby horror stuff, I don't know if this is Conjuring. Sometimes they have like the baby monitor hears voices in the newer ones, but anytime there's a baby issue, it's just like, this is too much now. It used to be fun. It's still fun. It's even more fun actually now, but it definitely hits harder.
Yeah, it gets at your core. I think the one scene that when I was watching it I had forgotten about was the one sort of towards the end where she's confronting the demon and she's like beating on this doll, and then like it cuts, and then it cuts, and suddenly the doll, it's like her like lifeless baby on the ground. And I was just like, oh my God. Like, I hadn't remembered that scene was there. And fortunately, they don't let you sort of stew in that too long because it reverts back to being a different doll. But that was almost one of the most vicious and deeply cutting scenes I've ever seen. And for maybe they let you sit with it for 10 or 15 seconds, and it is intense.
I will maybe talk more about that scene a little bit later.
It's an amazing scene. That's a great pick.
In my second pick, I think I went too deep in the sleepers for this here. I loved the part when Mia interrupts the priest when he's talking about like the death of the neighbors, and he starts saying, "I feel Higgins' absence every Sunday." And she plays obtuse and just gets out of the conversation, and it is one of my favorite things to do. And you can see it happening. Oh, she's not listening. She doesn't want to talk about this. She's going to get out of the conversation. She's like, there's John. We still have boxes to unpack. We still have boxes to unpack. Like, the way she got out of that conversation she didn't want to have was just clinical.
Oh, it was. I mean, like, you can see it. I have it right here. Ditching the priest. It was right on my list. I had the exact same thought. I was like, oh, priest is going deep, and she wants nothing to do with it, and she just gets right out so fast. It's amazing. They should show that in like how to get out of conversations class. It was beautiful.
I remember leaving, like, as going to church as a kid, and sometimes the priest would stand at the door on the way out, and you just like kind of like wait to make sure someone else talks to him, and then you go around the other side because you know he's going to try and shake your hand and talk to you about church and everything else. But she got roped in and she got right out. Great job.
Great job, and a very savvy pick, I'm going to say, on your part, because that would not have made it back around for your next round. So very savvy pick. Well done.
Thank you.
For my second pick, I'm going to go with the cinematography. Maybe you didn't see this coming, but there are some absolutely beautiful shots in this film. I think the two that really come to mind are when the neighbors get murdered early on in the movie, and you just see out the window, like the light flashes on, and there's like a spray of blood, and then you sort of see the scene going on next door and like the horror of it, but you don't really see it yet, but you know something horrific has happened next door. I thought that was shot beautifully. And then all the way at the very end, where they're showing Alfred Woodard's character, who had jumped out of the building and committed suicide, and the doll is there next to her, and then it cuts away and then it cuts back and the doll's gone. I thought that was also just like a beautifully shot scene. So I think as much as sort of horror gets sort of ripped on for just throwing some bodies together and some jump scares or whatever, I thought this was just a beautifully shot film.
Yeah, that goes so far in movies, and so many times in horror, you watch the trailer. My wife and I, we watch the trailer, and we just see like, was effort put into the cinematography? Because that's what really matters. Is this shot well? I don't really care a lot of times about the actors, and a lot of times in horror movies, but do they use a high grade camera? Do they know what they're doing? And this movie is shot so well. Great pick.
Thank you. My third pick is going to be a line, an Alfred Woodard line, and it's when they're in her bookstore, and Mia is first pretending not to be looking for the books for devil books or whatever, and then she finally fesses up to what she's looking for and tells her whole story, and she's like, "I know that sounds crazy," and Alfred Woodard comes up with this line that's just, well, it's no crazier than parting of the Red Sea, and it was just like, yes. Like, I feel like there's all these things that people are like, oh, that's dumb. That's totally unbelievable in terms of horror movies and things like that. And yet then people will be like, oh, but then they'll spend their Sunday in church talking about the parting of the Red Sea or people being reincarnated. All these things that just because someone else has believed that for a very long time, that doesn't make it any more believable than this other very unbelievable thing. And it was it was almost like a little bit of a lampshade of the film and of all this stuff, of just like bringing it all back to be like, yeah, this is unbelievable, but so are a lot of things.
I do this all the time with my family members who are religious, and like they would make fun of something like, the Scientology Netflix special would come out and be like, oh my goodness, how do people believe this? There's aliens or whatever. It's like, then you go in depth into what's believed by most religions, and it's all insane. If you're not like committed to, science or whatever, every religion is going to sound insane at some point, because it's all going to rely on faith. You have to rely on faith if something is nuts.
I thought that was it was a line that tied in, because there's obviously a lot of religion things in this movie. There's a lot of church, there's the priest, there's the devil worshiping, and it just ties all this together. And it's just like, sometimes crazy, unbelievable things happen, and some people believe in them and some people they don't, but it doesn't really matter what you believe in to some extent, because sometimes crazy things just happen.
Absolutely. That's a good pick. Let's see, this is my third pick. I'm going to go with, this rarely works out, but in this movie it did. Cops shooting first and then asking questions later. They barge into the house and they shoot the right person. You're never quite sure how that's going to work out. Doesn't seem to work out very often, but in this movie, having an itchy trigger finger worked for the cops.
Yep, they probably should have kicked in that other door a little bit sooner. Maybe it could have saved everyone a lot of hassle, but they did lay out that one cult member.
In my sleeper pick, I've got even more sleeper than this. I'm not sure if this happened in the same bookstore, but I forget this character's name, the one who gave her life at the end. I'm old. That means that there are very little things that can surprise me. If there is something shocking, I'm too tired to show it. And I feel like that's just such a great line. Like, when she says something crazy and the person doesn't react, she's like, what do you want me to do? Like, I'm old. And if it does shock me, then I'm too tired. What do you want? I'm not going to give you a big, I'm surprised, I can't believe you thing. I'm listening to you. I hear you, and I'm not thrown off at all. But I just love that line.
Yeah, it was a brilliant line. I mean, I think so. That was Evelyn, the character. Yep. And I mean, she just had some amazing lines. She's one of the most interesting characters in this film. You can tell by the fact that we've picked two of her lines here in this draft. All right, my sleeper pick here, and this is a brilliant move whenever you have the opportunity to do it, is it comes in at the very, very end of the film. But it's whenever you're trying to sell something and you just call it a collector's item and you get to charge more. And they do it when they're selling the doll at the thrift store or used store or whatever it is at the end of the movie. And they're like, oh, well, yeah, this doll looks kind of busted, but it's a collector's item. So that's why it's priced more. It's like, just call everything a collector's item. No one knows what that means. Who knows? Anything can be a collector's item if people collect it or if you buy it. But I love that move. It's just a strong, strong move.
Great move. It's like one-upping calling something, oh, yeah, it's vintage, it's old. No, it's collector's item. It's even more rare than something that's vintage.
Right. I'm going to open up just like a crappy store of used stuff, but just call it, the whole store will just be collector's items. And everything's going to be really expensive.
That's a great choice. I'm going to copy you from prior podcast here and have an anti-pick.
Oh, nice. Let's hear it.
Yeah, which is John, when there's a stabbings next door, leaving his pregnant wife to go check out on a scream next door. Like, your priority number one is keep wife and pregnant wife safe, not to go check on the neighbors. I guess this is all related to me never opening doors or anything else, talking to anyone who's knocking at my door. I'm staying in my house. I'm making sure everyone in my house is fine. I'm calling the cops. I'm not that important. There's not much I can. If there is someone over there killing someone, what now? I'm fighting them? This isn't my business.
Right.
I'm staying in the house.
Right.
I'm calling the cops, and they can do their thing. I'll stay in the house with a gun or something else, or a bat. I'm staying with my pregnant wife. The running off to go be hero is such a stupid move in these movies.
Yeah, it is. It is dumb. And it came back to bite him too, because the cult members snuck into his house while he ran across there, and then that led to the whole thing. But you got the sense this guy was a little bit. There's a lot of Boy Scout running through his veins. Like, I feel like he just couldn't help himself, and that was sort of the essence of his character, right? He's a doctor. He just has to go save people. He couldn't help himself. He
should have started with his family, but you're right.
Yep.
So our superlative this week is the scariest Annabelle spook. What do you got?
So mine, maybe people are going to think this is tame, but I just think it was really, really terrifying when she just showed up again.
Yeah.
Like,
my goodness.
It was just like, oh no. Because then it's like, it's just like, what are you going to do? Like, at that point, once that happens, you realize that there's literally nothing you can do. because they already got rid of it. That's what you would do. Like, oh, we had this creepy possessed doll. It was wrecking our lives. Let's just get rid of it. That shows you that that's not going to work. So once something comes back, and I know it's a bit of a trope of sort of like the bad penny that keeps showing back up or whatever, but I just think that is creepy as hell. And it's also something that I feel like, as a lot of these really creepy things, you could kind of imagine it happening, right? You'd be like, especially if you're moving, oh, maybe this did come back, but you're convinced that you threw it away. It's very relatable, but also just incredibly terrifying.
Yeah, that's such a good part. And you can see John's face when he says that. Like, didn't I? I'm pretty sure I didn't. I threw that away. And then she wants to keep it. So even it comes back. And then your wife, who just went through all that trauma, is like, no, let's keep it. The back of your head, you got to be thinking, this is absolutely nuts. But that was terrifying when that showed back up again.
Yep.
But that's what this movie does. It does subtle things like that so well, where it didn't take someone's like eyes being gouged out to be terrifying. It was just the doll being back. That was it. Yeah. And it was so
simple
terrifying.
Little thing. And you're just like, oh no.
So I was going to take this one, but we talked about it already. So I'll pick another spook, but the smashing of the doll daughter or whatever into the crib.
Oh God. Yeah.
Like, my wife and I both put like our legs up, like only like they just smashed the head of the baby into the side of the crib multiple times. Mm-hmm. And then they had the crying noise. Like that did not just happen. And what you said before is they moved on pretty quickly. I think they did that because they knew that was terrifying. They couldn't let you sit in that moment for much longer than they did. They needed to be like, no.
Yeah, I think it
was a hoax. The baby wasn't there.
You could tell as a master craftsman who was sort of just like, how long can we let this scene sit with the audience before they will just revolt? And I think they took it right up to the edge.
They did, and it wasn't even long. But that, so I didn't pick that. I was going to, but the part that also made me jump was in the trailer, I believe. But when there's the small Annabelle in the other room, and then she starts running towards the door that's slowly closing, and then it turns into the murderous daughter Annabelle and comes at her with a knife. Like that little switch from the little kid running, and all you hear is the footsteps and the doors closing. That scene was incredible.
Yeah, that was an incredible scene. That was another like incredibly shot scene. Like it's just that was you could tell it's technically just a really well done scene and super, super creepy.
Yeah.
Honorable mention, I also had just the sewing machine and the record player, just things starting back up again. And it's kind of a similar thing of the doll showing back up. It's just, I could imagine being at home and something in a kitchen, something turns on or something weird happens. There's a strange noise, whatever it is. It's seeing these type of movies that just sort of gets in your brain. And the next time something like that happens, you're just like, oh, is my house possessed now? Yeah. And it's just those little things that kind of work their way into your life.
And it's so great because your mind goes like, instead of saying like, well, maybe the kid turned it on or this happened or that happened, your head just goes right to, is my house possessed now? Do I have to move? And then you can sort of like work your way down from there. But it's where you go right away when the sewing machine starts going. And the sewing machine was great too, just because I guess it's unrelated, but it was very hot tub time machine-y, which I always love, which is like, she's going to prick her finger one of these times. And they know you know.
Oh, yeah.
They keep teasing you with it. And it's like the worst feeling. I remember seeing it happen to my mom. I remember trying to learn stuff back when I was a little kid, and that happened. It's a terrible, terrible feeling, and you know what's going to happen to her. And they gave it to you, but they teased you for a while with that sewing needle on the sewing machine little cut. Yeah,
and the sound of that sewing machine running was so brilliant. My other, and this isn't maybe totally tied to a sort of Annabelle scare, but just the creepy baby carriage in the basement. That one really hits home because when we bought our house, it's a house from the 1800s, and when we moved in, there was that exact creepy baby carriage in the third floor, and it had in it an old communion dress or something that was like all lace and like totally crumbly, like you couldn't even touch it. This thing 100% is possessed. And my wife and I had a debate. We're sort of like, well, what do we do with this? It's obviously haunted, but you never know in these situations. If I get rid of it, is that going to anger the spirit? Because we've been living here for a little while. We haven't had any problems with any ghosts or anything like that. So I didn't want to ruin the balance that we have. So we decided we couldn't get rid of it, but we didn't want to see it. So the house on the third floor has these eaves. So I went in and I pushed it around a corner. So you can't see it, and it's tucked in there, but we didn't remove it from the house, which I feel like was probably just the safest thing we could do.
If you start seeing that eke its way out of that corner into your line of vision, I think you might have to move. And this is tough because I think you have the most hauntable house of anyone I know.
Yes.
I mean, you got big ceilings, and it's an old-timey house. I think it's a historical site. Is that right?
Yeah, it's like it's just an old house that's, got
You got
all
a
sorts of
church
weird
nearby too. There's a little elementary school right across the way. There's some creepiness going on possibly in that house.
Mm-hmm.
So you're right to be worried.
And that's why we had to be so careful with the baby carriage.
Right.
I think if we lived somewhere else, we would just toss that thing. We had a dumpster. We just tossed it.
It's good to not upset them. And maybe after you guys go and, move to the next generation, the next people will take that and try to burn it or get rid of it. And then they'll get haunted. But you guys are smart enough to just not mess with the ecosystem.
Yeah. And I think movies of this genre to help, they probably saved my life because of that.
We are saving lives on this podcast, mainly ours. All right, I want to get to mine isn't very good, so I'll go really fast. But one change to be a blockbuster.
Yep.
I would have liked a couple shots. I don't think I've ever seen this, but I would have liked a couple POV shots from Annabelle. Like, let's see.
I like that.
Perspective when she's like moving from one room to the next, or seeing what's going on in the room. I would like to see what she's seeing. Let's just give me a couple little quick camera glimpses from Annabelle's perspective.
I like that. You know what I think would have been a great one too, right at the beginning when she's in the lap of the Annabelle who died, just the doll vision with the blood over her eye, and all of a sudden it turns red, and you're how did they not put that in?
Like Jason versus Freddy, it just the blood on the camera. Oh, so good. Yeah. So that's my little.
Oh, I love that. So mine, I thought that the Evelyn character needed a little bit more screen time. Like I wanted to know a little bit more about her. And I also like Alfre Woodard. I feel like anytime I see her in anything, she kind of steals the screen. Like she's a legit actor. I didn't realize this. She's been acting for decades and decades. She has 4 Emmys, a Golden Globe, 3 Screen Actors Guild. She was nominated for Academy Award in 1983.
What?
Yeah, 40 years ago, she was nominated for Academy Award. And she has 2 Grammy nominations. This is one of the most talented women in show business. And whenever she's on screen, she's great. And I wanted a little bit more time with her. I think her she also makes this ultimate sacrifice in the film. And we get a little bit of her backstory about how, her and her daughter, and she had this, she had tried to take her own life at one point because of the guilt. But I thought just a little bit more about her background. I thought that would have sort of made the ending a little bit better. And people, like, the film deserved, it almost owed her more given the sacrifice that she makes at the end of the film, I thought.
I think you're 100% right. It's so fun when horror movies take an incredible actor or actress, and they, like, horror movies are often known for, screaming co-eds and bad acting. But when you put like a real actress in there, it just changes everything to get that sort of great acting like she had. I mean, we already chose her for like 3 different things during this podcast because she's so good in this role, and it's so small. It feels like they might have taken away, I don't know this for sure, but there might be some deleted scenes of her with more backstory that we didn't get to see just in the, because they wanted to make it a little bit shorter. But I would have loved to see more of her character for sure.
Yeah, that's my guess. They must have, when they were writing this, I'm sure gave her a little bit more in the script, but I think she absolutely made the most of the time she had on screen.
To make that ultimate sacrifice and barely get any screen time before but still have that sort of impact on the audience was pretty impressive.
Yep.
Spin-off ideas. What do you got?
Mine's pretty far in a left field here, but I think you might be into it. So I want to expand the Conjuring universe even more. I feel like these are all horror movies, and I think that you could really expand this into a whole bunch of different directions. And I'm going to start with a 1960s interior decorating show that takes place in the Conjuring universe. I thought the homes that these people lived in were some of the most beautifully decorated homes. I know I mentioned lamps and paint colors. Their home and then their apartment are absolutely just gorgeous. Like they're, I don't know where they got all this money to decorate all this, but it's like they're these absolutely just beautifully decorated places. And I think a sort of a period focused decor show, like I don't even think that exists. Like they have all these HGTV shows about decorating things now, and it's all modern stuff. Give me one from the 60s. Give me one from the 70s. Like, go take me through the Conjuring universe. But what about in just an interior decorating show? Why not?
That'd be the first one that I would want to watch. So I love it.
Right? I think you could bring a whole bunch of people into it. I'd be like, yeah, I'll watch this. And like, so maybe one of the episodes takes place in like them decorating their craftsman home that will later get, be the murder scene. But like at this point, they're just putting in some new tiles.
That's great. Out of left field, but a home run. Mine is also a bit out there. So I had a goofy idea, and I used Chat GPT to write a script basically for this movie. So I wanted a movie where Annabelle haunts the Chucky doll. So that was the premise that I put into Chat GPT, and they came out with the name of the movie would be Annabelle vs. Chucky, Dolls of Darkness, and the premise is the premise is that Annabelle is already at this house. They bring home the Chucky doll, and Annabelle gets jealous of the hands-on approach of Chucky killing all these people, and the demon that's possessing Annabelle gets jealous and then tries to possess Chucky, but Chucky isn't one to back down from a fight, and then we end up having a family caught in the middle of this demonic presence war between Annabelle trying to steal the powers of Chucky to actually move herself, and Chucky trying to take the soul of the doll, which he's always looking for. So it's this battle, two of these dolls going at each other.
That, I think, is peak doll horror right there. Like absolute peak. We should greenlight this right now. I would see that opening weekend. That sounds so good. And I feel like we've also had a little bit of doll horror resurgence lately. We had there's that Megan movie. There's the Chucky TV series. There was the remake of Child's Play. I don't know, probably at this point 4 or 5 years ago. Those are all awesome, and I think this would be even better. Obviously, doll horror is hot. Horror mashups also hot. That's a brilliant call.
Yeah, doll horror mashup. Let's pit them against each other and see who wins. I would love to see that movie.
And the script's basically already written, so
I got like 2 page. I just kept going. Eventually, I had it like whittle it down to a premise that I could actually talk about instead of like getting into the characters' narratives, which is where I went. But lots of fun was had coming up with that premise.
That is amazing.
Is like Annabelle vs. Chucky, Dolls of Darkness is a heart-pounding horror thriller that combines the supernatural malevolence of Annabelle with the sadistic nature of Chucky. Like, this is an incredible idea for a movie.
That's maybe the best idea we've had on this podcast yet. That movie is someone's going to hear this, and this movie is coming out in less than a year. There's just no chance that this doesn't happen.
Have Netflix make it. They greenlight it. Let's go.
Wow.
Is there anything we missed? Any notes? I've got a couple for you. You'll love this.
Yeah, let's hear it.
Well, the first one you'll love. This was shot in chronological order.
I had that listed as well. I was just going through my notes. I love that. We've talked about it before because in my mind, that's how they shoot all movies. And it's just totally bizarre that anyone would shoot a movie any other way. So I love when they do that. And I feel like you can always, like, it feels a little more real when they do it that way.
And that's why they do it. They want the characters to sort of, progress as the actual characters in the movie would. They want them to deteriorate or whatever is thrown their way affect them as the movie goes along. So I'm glad they chose that because you definitely could feel it.
Yep. I mean, it's that's how we'll shoot Annabelle Chucky movie.
Absolutely. For sure. I want that's Chucky to know
requirement
what's happened in the past.
Let's see. I really liked just the question that they asked the detectives. Just, were they satanic? It's like, that's just whenever you're having to ask that question, like, shit's gone horribly wrong.
Yeah.
Like, oh, were they
It's-
satanic?
It's also a sign of the times, like the 60s, 70s, with the Helter Skelter, where all that mattered was, were they Satanists? It's like, I don't know. It doesn't matter. They killed people. I don't know what they
Right.
believed. They believed in killing these people.
Yep.
No, they're atheists. Does that make it better?
Yeah, it's like, oh, well,
What are your thoughts on, have you ever played someone Thumb War and they cheat with the pinky finger?
no, I've never seen the pinky finger move. I feel like I've seen the like index finger move where they try to just like do the scoop, but the pinky, no. That was a
it's
new
off-
technique.
Off the top ropes. It's someone when you see that, you're like, all right, I don't want to play with you anymore.
Yeah. I haven't had a thumb war in a while, but they're good. I don't think I had any other notes. I did like I like the baseball bat as a weapon when he came out of the house. I think that's always like a good thing to have, not too far away from your bedroom. Just a good baseball bat.
Is that your weapon to defend your house?
Yeah, we got a couple baseball bats around because I feel like it's like I don't want to have guns. I'm not a guns in my house. I would just end up shooting someone by accident or myself. Like that would be horrible. But I'm not going to hit someone by accident with a baseball bat. So I like that.
I've always been a hockey stick guy. I have a hockey stick
It's
ready
reach.
to go. Yeah, the reach is huge. I get the jab in there. I feel like it's enough to deter someone else, unless they have a gun. Like even versus a knife, I feel like it's enough where they might have a chance to think it over and be like, I don't want to engage in this.
Right. I'm going to go next door. That guy probably doesn't have a hockey stick.
I'm a lefty too for hockey, so he won't see it coming.
Whoa. Yeah.
Let's see a couple more here. Saying this when you give a gift is such a douche move, but it's so on brand for John. Honey, we'll be a little short on the rent for the next few months, is what he said after he gave Annabelle to his wife. It's like, all right, you have to just be like, oh, I spent a lot of money on this, so now you have to care more. It's a jerk move.
Well, it's a collector's item.
It's a collector's item, so it's inferred that, like, yeah, it cost me to stay. Might as well just leave the tag on there. And here's another little, the characters' names. Did you read that they were references to Rosemary's Baby? So Mia and John were the names of the characters in this. The characters in Rosemary's Baby were played by Mia Farrow and John Cassavetes. Am I saying that right?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Yeah, so Mia and John come from Rosemary's Baby, obviously the Sharon Tate murders, Helter Skelter, so it's all tied in there, but that's why they're named what they are.
Do you know that they were originally thinking about casting Jack Nicholson in that role for Rosemary's Baby?
Is there anything Jack couldn't do? Like, that'd be great.
I mean, it would have been great, but I think that he then filmed Chinatown shortly after that, and I think that he probably wouldn't, like that probably doesn't happen if he's probably not in that role if he's in Rosemary's Baby, which I think worked out for the best. Both amazing films.
Yeah, sometimes you go back to the early 70s for movies. I think those were 70s, right? Early 70s, not 60s, but either way. Sometimes you go back that far, movies don't hold up, but both those movies are incredible and very rewatchable too.
Oh, yeah. I love those films. They were both really, really good.
I guess I'm going to keep going here. Do you know how to use accursed versus cursed in a sentence?
No, I have no idea.
They said
are they the same thing?
One's an adjective and the other one isn't. I don't know. There's a difference, and I don't know how to use the word, so I don't know how to say accursed versus cursed.
But probably whenever you're using those words, no one's going to really care either because they're like, I've been accursed, or wait,
no, you've been cursed. I'm correct. Oh, now I'm correct. I was cursed by someone that corrected me on my word choices. That's what happened. Let's see, learning the difference between ghosts and inhuman spirits. I feel like The Conjuring and Insidious does that very well. It's like, oh no, it's not a ghost. This being never possessed a body, so it's way more demonic.
Yep. Yeah. Otherwise you would have had to read all those devil books to figure that out. They save you from having to find that section in the bookstore or maybe even your local library where they have a surprisingly large occult section.
Could have had some text at the beginning. This is about inhuman spirits, not ghosts.
Yeah. Instead of the text at the beginning, it was also a little funny. The text at the beginning, kind of just explained what dolls were. It was dolls have been used for. I know. Yeah, I know.
Yeah, no, they've been scary for a long time. Yeah, probably as long as they've existed. Yeah, I get it.
Yeah.
And the empty stroller getting hit by the trash trucks. Was that the Speed reference that you were talking
That
about?
was the Speed reference. Yep.
Yeah.
The homage.
Yeah. Oh, homage. Sorry. Yeah. So that's it. That was. Just to circle back. It's ridiculous we got to do this movie, and I'm so excited we get to do the next movie in the Conjuring universe, which is what again?
We're doing The Nun. So The Nun comes out later, but takes place earlier. So it's sort of forward and backwards in time at the same time.
So awesome, Mark. Double feature of the Conjuring universe. Yeah, next episode will be The Nun. This was awesome, as usual. And later.
Later.